Welcome to Aspects and Configurations, Episode 1, Major Aspects, Conjunction, Sextile, Square, Trine, and Opposition translated into plain, lived language. Today we'll move beyond flashcards and treat aspects like conversations your planets are having. A conjunction is a merger, two archetypes sharing one microphone, louder but less separable. A sextile is opportunity by collaboration, light effort, small doorways, momentum if you say yes. A square is the 90-degree turn, friction that trains skill, not a flaw to fear. A trine is flow, low friction talent that needs intention to become mastery. An opposition is the bridge, perspective that asks you to hold two ends honestly. We'll listen for these dynamics by element and modality, so square in fire doesn't behave like square in earth, and we'll anchor the meanings with real examples, how a Sun-Mars square feels at work, how a Moon-Venus trine changes a kitchen, how a Mercury-Saturn conjunction edits a life. By the end, you'll hear your chart as a room full of voices, and you'll know which ones to turn up, soften, or invite into dialogue. Let's start with conjunctions because they're the loudest simply by proximity. A conjunction is a merger. Two planets stand together at nearly the same degree, and their voices blend into one timbre. The room can't easily tell where one ends and the other begins. When this is your Sun with Mercury, your identity and your thinking style are braided. You don't just have opinions. You are your opinions for a moment, and the fix is curiosity because the line between self and thought gets bright and thin. When the moon is conjunct Venus, feeling and liking intertwine, comfort and beauty become the same word, and the work is learning to choose nourishment that isn't only sweet, but also sustaining. Mars conjunct Saturn can feel like a foot on the gas and a hand on the parking brake. The grown version becomes disciplined action, impeccable timing, and the courage to move at a pace that builds power instead of smoke. Conjunctions are not automatically blessings or curses. They are intensifiers. They concentrate attention so you can't pretend the topic isn't central. If you've got a conjunction on an angle near the ascendant, descendant, IC, or midheaven, people feel it from across the street. They'll praise and criticize you for that synergy because it's simply what registers first. The way to work a conjunction is to learn both planets' languages, so neither hijacks the other. If Venus keeps smoothing Mars until your boundaries melt, give Mars a job early in the day. One clean decision before lunch, one scope line you refuse to cross. If Saturn keeps chilling your Sun's warmth, give the Sun regular stage time. Small, honest visibility that proves to your nervous system you won't be punished for shining conjunctions want choreography, not denial. When you schedule the right shared move, the fusion becomes a signature instead of a knot. Sextiles are quiet doors that open when you knock. They're cooperative but not automatic. They respond to small effort with quick reward. A sextile is like two neighbors with compatible skills who will absolutely help each other. If you text first, Mercury sextile Mars is pithy, writing that snaps into action as soon as you give it a prompt and a deadline. If you wait for inspiration, you'll say you don't have it, but if you set a 20-minute timer, it arrives like a friend with the right tool. Venus sextile Jupiter is social ease and tasteful expansion. Send the invitation, pitch the idea, offer the generous version in one lane, and watch doors open. The danger with sextiles is not harm, but neglect. Because they don't force you, they can get dusty. Treat them like gym buddies. Schedule the rep, show up even when you're not in the mood, and you'll remember why this angle is a gift. When life feels more grind than music, look for your sextiles and put them on the calendar as tiny collaborations between parts of you that like each other. 10 minutes of their activity can change the posture of a day. Squares are friction. Squares are growth. Squares are the reason you leave a better version of yourself at the end of a chapter than the one who began it. A square sets two planets 90 degrees apart. each convinced that its way is the way. Mars wants speed, Saturn wants structure. Sun wants to declare, Moon wants to feel, Venus wants harmony, Pluto wants truth so deep the paint peels. People fear squares because they're noisy and because they reveal where you can't have both outcomes at once without trade-offs and craft. But think of every skill you respect: athletic, musical, professional, relational, and behind it is the cadence of square energy. Tension, repetition, small corrections, better timing, new strength, then another plateau, then another push. The immature square either explodes or surrenders. Mars storms out when Saturn asks for process. Saturn freezes the room until nobody wants to try again. The mature square names the conflict without melodrama and writes a rule both sides can live with. If it's Sun square Moon, you practice choosing a mode before you enter a situation: public promise or private restoration. You refuse to self-betray by performing when you need shelter, and you refuse to hide when leadership is your job today. If it's Venus square Uranus, you refuse to solve for safety by killing novelty, and you refuse to solve for novelty by threatening safety. You schedule update energy so you don't have to cheat to feel alive. Squares ask you to become a designer, not a defendant. When you adopt the designer posture, the friction stops becoming a referendum on your worth and becomes a gym where you're allowed to be winded on your way to strong. Trines are flow states. Trines are the moments your body knows how before your mind issues a memo. Two planets, 120 degrees apart, recognize each other like cousins raised in the same town. Sun trine Jupiter gives a natural sense of scale and possibility. You say yes in the right places without inflating into fantasy. Moon trine Neptune makes tenderness and imagination easy. You empathize and give form to feeling with fewer splinters. Mars, trine, Pluto channels force into precision. You move heavy things quietly and leave clean cuts instead of jagged tears. People talk about trines as luck. The deeper truth is that trines are fluency. You practice this in other rooms or other lives or other seasons, and the music is in your hands now. The risk with trines is complacency. If everything comes easily in this channel, you might not notice when the rest of the chart atrophies. Use trines to fund and steady your squares. Use them to pull load without cruelty. Use them to mentor yourself. The part of you that knows can teach the part of you that's learning, but only if you invite the flow into the friction with practical steps. If Mercury trines Saturn, write the outline that Mars square Neptune is struggling to execute. If Venus trines the Moon, let that comfort feed the Mars square. Saturn that's exhausted from being good. Trines are water pressure at a stable faucet. You can fill a tub or blast a stain. Aim the flow. Oppositions are medicine disguised as tug of war. Two planets face each other across the wheel and project their qualities back and forth until you realize the only way to win is to stop pretending the other end of the rope is the enemy. An opposition is a polarity that your life asks you to integrate instead of choose. If the sun opposes the moon, public identity and private need must learn to pass the baton instead of stealing it. If Venus opposes Mars, reception and pursuit must learn choreography. Love becomes both welcome and boundary, both sweetness and specificity. If Mercury opposes Neptune, fact and myth must shake hands. You learn to write sentences that honor truth while holding wonder, and the lesson is to timestamp your dreams and footnote your data so your audience doesn't get lost. The immature opposition swings. You become all Saturn at work and all Moon at home, all Jupiter in January and all Saturn in March, all romance in courtship and all logistics in marriage. The mature opposition moves like a hinge instead of a seesaw. You turn toward one side when it's time, then you turn toward the other and return on schedule. You stop outsourcing the half you dislike to partners and rivals. You start doing both jobs at different hours and quit resenting the hours you aren't doing the other job. Oppositions are where many of our relationships happen because other people arrive carrying the piece we're tired of carrying alone. If you blame them for it, you reenact your childhood fights. If you thank them for the mirror and negotiate, on paper, you get a grown bond that makes both ends stronger. Now, because charts are particular and you're not a textbook, let's tie these angles to living rooms and not just geometry. Imagine you have Sun conjunct Mercury in the 3rd house square, Saturn in the 6th, and trine Uranus in the 11th. The conjunction says your identity and voice are one braid. You're at your best when thinking out loud, teaching, writing, translating. The square to Saturn in the 6th says craft and routine will test you. If you want your voice to carry, you must meet deadlines and accept edits without dramatizing the editor. The trine to Uranus in the 11th says your mind invents tools and frames communities want. If you share consistently, networks unlock doors. Your life changes when you make a weekly publishing cadence. I agree with someone you trust about a definition of done and show up in a group that values your experiments. The angles didn't doom you to struggle or gift you fame. They wrote a recipe you can follow without asking permission. Picture Moon sextile Venus, with both quincunx to Saturn and opposite Neptune. We could get lost in minor aspects, but stay with the main ones. The sextile says comfort and pleasure collaborate when you invite them. Your body calms when you make beauty. The opposition to Neptune says your feelings can drown in vibe. You need containers for tenderness, or it paints the whole room. If we add a square to Mars, we'd see heat that can be used or squandered. With sextile alone, the move is simple. Cook, arrange, walk in pretty light, then put an end time on reverie so the day keeps its bones. Major aspects tell you sequence. The sextile wants an invite. The opposition wants rhythm and clarity. If a square were present, it would want practice under pressure. If a trine were present, it would want use, not neglect. Conjunctions want a shared job with boundaries. How do you tell the difference between growth and injury with a square or an opposition? Your body tells you. Growth hurts like effort. Injury hurts like erosion. Effort pain resolves with rest and returns as strength. Erosion pain grows a story about how you're not built for this. If a relationship keeps triggering your Venus square Saturn in ways that end with more clarity and better skill, you're training. If it ends with humiliation and smaller capacity, you're bleeding. Aspects can be used by systems around you to extract labor or loyalty without care. The chart shows a capacity, not a duty. You're allowed to walk and take your angles to a room that deserves them. Let's make each angle concrete with pocket practices you can try this week. For a conjunction, pick the pair and define a shared task that starts the morning Sun-Mercury writes 3 lines before the phone. Moon-Venus preps a small comfort you'll actually eat. Mars-Saturn picks 1 scope line and 1 small action that respects it. Jupiter-Uranus chooses a tiny experiment with a clear reward. The win is not volume. It's identity coherence without self-erasure. For a sextile, schedule a micro-collab. Mercury-Mars gets a 20-minute sprint. Venus-Jupiter sends 2 invitations. Sun-Saturn drafts a promise and posts it where you'll see it. Moon-Neptune gets 10 minutes of music, then goes back to work. For a square, define the drill, not the drama. Mars square Saturn, 3 sets of timing, 90 minutes on, 15 off, 3 times. No heroic last lap. Venus square Pluto, 1 honest conversation with yourself on paper before a date. What am I actually hungry for? And how will I tell if I'm getting it or paying for attention I don't want? Sun square Moon, pick tonight or today, private restoration or public output, and keep your choice without apology. For a trine, aim the flow, Mercury trine Jupiter. Answer 3 messages that open doors for others. Moon trine Venus, make the room kinder so your square doesn't have to work in a storm. Mars trine Pluto, carry 1 heavy thing across the room that's been glaring at you. Finish the task and use the momentum on your hardest square. Next. For an opposition, write a hinge sentence that you use at transitions. Now I'm deciding. Now I'm listening. Now we're planning. Now we're playing. Now I'm leading. Now I'm being led. Say it aloud so your body registers the switch. If you overcorrect, schedule the return so neither end of the rope feels abandoned. Because orbs vary by tradition, think of it like this while you listen for your life. The tighter the angle, the louder the conversation. Loose trines still hum, exact trines sing, loose squares, still present training moments. Exact squares demand design now. Conjunctions with very tight orbs can be blinding. You may need other people to reflect what you can't separate in yourself. Oppositions at exactness can pull relationships into archetypes. Work on timing and you'll tame projection. Context matters. A square between malefics in a nocturnal chart or between benefics in a diurnal chart carries different weather. But you don't need to memorize sect to use this episode today. Ask simpler questions. Which house is hosting the tension and which house is holding the other end of the axis? If your square lies between the second and fifth houses, money and creativity are training each other. Price your art in ways that keep the studio open. If your opposition spans the 4th and 10th, private life and public calling need a shared calendar. Put one ritual in the 4th that the 10th cannot negotiate away, and pick one 10th house promise the 4th will support. Without sabotage, angles are choreography across rooms. If a trine connects the 9th and 1st, you find yourself when you find meaning. Schedule learning, and your identity stops needing applause to feel real. People ask, which aspect is best? That's the wrong map. The better question is, which aspect is underused? The neglected sextile is a free boost you're not taking. The coddled trine is talent you're not applying to hard problems. The unloved square is a gym membership you keep paying for without going. If you show up 3 times a week, your life gets easier in places that matter. The feared opposition can become your best diplomacy. The overwhelming conjunction can become your signature when you stop letting one partner dominate angles reward use. The sky is generous that way. Let's try some portraits that sound like people you know. A designer with Venus conjunct Mercury in Libra, trine Saturn in Aquarius, and square Pluto in Capricorn learns to translate taste into systems that scale while telling difficult truths. Kindly early in her career, she smooths feedback to be liked. The Pluto square makes clients feel pandered to. When she starts writing one hard sentence per presentation, what will not work and why, clients begin trusting her, and the trine to Saturn turns that trust into long-term retainers. An athlete with Mars, trine Jupiter, and square Neptune discovers that inspiration is a spice, not a plan. When he trains with a written schedule and lets joy decorate it rather than dictate it, the trine carries him through hard weeks, and the square stops being a fog machine. A teacher with sun opposite moon across the 3rd and 9th finally stops trying to be the same person on the page and on the couch. She writes for readers in the morning and cooks for herself at night. Both sides get better because each is allowed to be itself on time, not all the time. If you want a single, lifelong practice that respects angles, it's this. Choose scale. Squares want small, repeated effort. Sextiles want tiny invitations. Trines want applications to worthy problems. Oppositions want timing and the courage to let one side lead for a while without assassinating the other. Conjunctions want shared roles that are clearly named, so fusion doesn't become confusion. When you pick the right scale for the angle, you stop hurting yourself with the wrong tool. You don't take a sledgehammer to a rose bush or a nail file to a brick. You match tool to task, and suddenly the job feels human. Let's speak to the seasons where transits light these angles because timing changes the volume. When Jupiter trines your natal sun or moon, say yes more in one lane and show up weekly. When Saturn squares your Venus or Mars, write down standards and reps. Compassion will be needed, but the gift is muscle. When Uranus opposes your chart ruler, expect updates in identity and relationships. Create reversible experiments, so change isn't a wrecking ball when Neptune conjuncts your Mercury. Double your craft and sobriety. Make art, timestamp promises, and have a trusted editor. When Pluto squares your Sun, you will not power through with persona. Choose truth and boundaries before theater, and let one necessary ending teach you a better beginning. The angle tells you the pedagogy. trines through you, sextiles with you, squares at you, oppositions to you, conjunctions inside you. If you match study style to teacher, you graduate without repeating grades in dramatic fashion. Here's one more lens that helps when charts feel like puzzles. Every aspect contains a virtue and a vice. The virtue of the conjunction is focus. The vice is blinding identification. The virtue of the sextile is responsiveness. The vice is laziness. The virtue of the square is strength. The vice is needless conflict. The virtue of the trine is grace. The vice is entitlement. The virtue of the opposition is wisdom. The vice is projection. You don't need to shame the vice. You need to notice it and feed the virtue with small acts. When you repeat the small acts, your nervous system learns the angle's best habit, and the worst habit has fewer chances to drive. Let's close by making this utterly practical. Pick one conjunction you carry, name both planets out loud, and give them a 5-word job description that includes both. Mercury, Venus. Write it beautifully, clearly. Mars, Saturn. Move, clean work, forward. Sun, Neptune. Make meaning visible, gently. Put that sentence where you start your day. Now, pick one sextile. Schedule the smallest expression of it 3 times this week. If it's Mercury sextile Mars, 3 20-minute sprints. If it's Venus sextile Jupiter, 3 micro-invitations. If it's Moon sextile Saturn, 3 acts of soothing structure. A tidy drawer, a bedtime you'll keep. A packed lunch that tastes like dignity. Now pick one square and decide your drill. Name the 2 values involved and write one rule they can both live with. Speed and quality share a cadence. 90 on, 15 off for 3. Romance and truth share a rule. No truth and anger, no romance to avoid truth. Put the drill on your calendar. Now pick one trine and point it at the square. If the square is Mars-Saturn and you have Mercury trine Jupiter, use your strong writing to define success and post it where your working self can see it when tired. If the square is Sun-Moon and you have Venus trine Neptune, use tenderness and atmosphere to feed both ends. Make home beautiful so private life restores you, and make your workspace kind so public life doesn't bruise you. Finally, pick one opposition and write 2 hinge sentences you will say when you switch modes. Now I'm the boss, now I'm the parent. Now I'm the artist, now I'm the accountant. Now I'm speaking, now I'm listening. Practice them at doorways so your body learns the turn. That's your major aspect toolkit. Like 5 core dynamics you'll hear everywhere once you know the sound. If you want a mirror while you practice, come to mysticbolt.com, pull a spread in Tarot Studio, and ask a planet-to-planet question in plain language, like, what does my Mars need to respect Saturn this week? Or, how can my Venus and Pluto tell the truth? Kindly. Use the Rider-Waite Tarot app for a quick nudge before a conversation where your opposition might flare, so you walk in with a theme instead of heat. Take a free tarot reading to set a weekly focus that supports your strongest square, and let that focus be the promise you keep. When your mind is loud and you can't remember which angle you're working, tune your attention with chakra frequencies for 10 minutes. Your Mercury will find its lane, and your Mars will stop trying to solve feelings with force. At night, wind down with the pranayama flow breath timer so your moon stops carrying the day into tomorrow. And your conjunctions, don't talk over your sleep. In the comments, if you want to practice out loud, tell me the 5-word job description you gave your favorite conjunction, the 1-sentence drill you're trying for your square, and the hinge line you'll use for your opposition. Angles are not fate. They are choreography. Learn the steps, repeat them kindly, and your chart starts sounding like music you can dance to, not a noise you have to survive.